Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Live. In this week's Rebuilding America segment, in case you haven't noticed, President Joe Biden is a fan of trains. The man they referred to as Amtrak Joe was out in Philly last week trying to sell the public on his $2 trillion infrastructure plan, which includes a lot of cash here for America's rail infrastructure, including $80 billion going to a lot of those services that he had written in his days in the Senate on the Amtrak, going up and forth, back and forth between the Capitol and the East Coast. And Republicans might be pushing back against the size of that plan, but also interested in investing in America's rail. So for more on that, I want to bring on our next guest to discuss where these plans will go. And joining us is John Spain, Southern Rail Commission Vice Chairman. Mr. Spain, appreciate you coming on here to chat with us today. I mean, we're talking about $80 billion in this proposal to go to rails. Republicans pushed back a little bit there, but still noted money going here. And it would obviously impact a few key regions in the U.S., including the Gulf. But talk to me about how big a deal this is.
It's a very, very big deal. And the United States historically falls behind other countries in terms of its investment in rail. This gives us an opportunity to not only promote and improve the Northeast Corridor, which runs, Washington, New York on the East Coast, but also to look at places like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama along the Gulf Coast and other parts of the country on long-distance train investments. And so the Southern Rail Commission is a unique organization created by Congress back in 1982 that would support and promote passenger rail along the Gulf Coast. We used to have a service from New Orleans all the way to Jacksonville, Florida. It was destroyed in 2005 by Hurricane Katrina, which is a long time ago. The rails have long been restored, but the service is not. So one of our priorities in talking to both this administration, Federal Railroad Administration, and Amtrak is when will that service be restored? We also are excited to start and restart a service between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Both of those are going to be not only important for transportation, but for economic development. And the Southern Rail Commission has done an extensive study that shows the financial impact in a very positive way along the Gulf Coast. The other thing that I would remind your viewers is that these trains also provide a rescue ability when we have natural disasters. So in Hurricane Katrina, you may recall that we had literally tens of thousands of people who had to stay in the New Orleans Superdome. Had we had passenger service, those trains could have been used for evacuation to bring people out of harm's way. And just as a reminder, the state of Louisiana had 5 named storms last year. So we think it's not only going to be good for economic development, it also is going to serve in getting our neighbors, our friends out of harm's way if we have another disaster like Katrina.
John, can you talk a bit more about the economic impact from something like this? No question, the build out would lead to additional jobs, but what about the communities that are along that path? What's the economic impact there?
We actually had a study done by the University of Southern Mississippi that looked at the economic impact for Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. People forget at times that this is America's Gulf Coast and is a very attractive place for tourism. People from other countries fly into New Orleans, which is a world-class city they want to visit, and oftentimes rent a car and ride over and use the beaches on the Florida Panhandle, the Alabama coast, and the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Just as an example, in the study done by the University of Southern Mississippi, and they looked at the economic impact of all 3 states. So in Mississippi alone, new visitor spending goes from $24 million a year to estimated $494 million. Jobs created go from 394 up to 7,876. That gives us an economic impact for the Mississippi state alone somewhere between $480 million. And that same number is very similar in both Louisiana and Mississippi. This will bring back tourism, give them a way to very easily leave an airport in New Orleans, catch a train, and go across the Gulf Coast. And so we know it's got huge impact for our region. What the president's plan does is provide critical funding to restore this. And we can show them without a doubt, based on this study and others, that there's an economic return on that investment.
Yeah, and John, I mean, lastly, just to put the numbers in context, because when we're talking about the president's plan, as I said, $80 billion to the agency. In a normal year, it would get $2 billion. The Republican plan on their investment counter proposal has $20 billion slated for railroad investment here. So it sounds like a lot of red states would be benefiting from spending on rails. But when you look at those numbers, I mean, put that into context for me in terms of which one might be doing too little, and which one you want to see passed here?
I think that the president's number is right. Being obviously politically not naive, I think you're going to see some negotiations and conversations on that. I think that people tend to underestimate how much support there is throughout the country. We tend to focus on the Northeast Corridor, the East Corridor, but there are routes similar to what we're talking about on the Gulf Coast underway and being planned across the country. We think of this as a jobs creator. And let me give you an example. The corridor between Baton Rouge and New Orleans has over $100 billion in investment from petrochemical companies. Many of the people who are unemployed in both New Orleans and Baton Rouge can be trained as welders to work in that industry or other skill sets, but many times don't have the vehicle to get to those high-paying jobs. We could put those people, after properly training in both cities, take them to a central point between the two cities, have a van take them to work, and create high-paying jobs with benefits for people that otherwise might be unemployed. That's just one example. We know there are people in both cities that need those jobs opportunities, and the return on investment on the relatively small amount of money we put into this Baton Rouge New Orleans train can be returned in new wages and bringing people jobs that they otherwise wouldn't have.
John Spain, I'm going to have to plan my trip to Louisiana at some point here. This got me thinking about that. Southern Rail Commission Vice Chairman, it's good to talk to you today.